noon hour is here.
Check it out.
And you're locked on to Utah's highest rated, most listened to sports radio station.
It's my station. It's my station.
This is Hans Olsen and Scotty G on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Come on in, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. We don't have a single thing to talk about today.
Woo, it's a busy one.
Not a thing. BYU just went all in on a coach in a financial package that is very un-BYU-like.
Was the financial package released, the information? Because it is out there.
Well, I mean, BYU's not going to release it, but agents and things are going to release it. And Matt Norlander, who's one of the best college basketball writers out there, said that it was 7 years, $30 million, so an average of 4.2, which probably means it starts in the mid threes and will finish around 5.
Wow.
And yeah, if I'm Kalani, I'm like, hey man.
Well, I'll tell you this: BYU is not used to their contracts being reported on, so there's going to be some damage control there because I don't think I'm sure the coaches talk, but when it's not reported on, you could be like, yeah, they're giving me 1.7. It's a calling.
Yeah.
But when it's reported on, if I'm Kalani, I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. If I'm Kevin Young and I'm on a path to be an NBA head coach that he was on, and then all of a sudden you go to Brigham Young University, you're going to want those details out there to tell the world, like, I'm doing this because I got paid.
Yeah, it's money.
I'm not doing this because I can't get an NBA or I'm not good enough for the NBA. I'm getting it because, I'm getting paid. So that's a message that agent's going to want to get out there because a guy who was in the running, Danny Ainge just mentioned, he interviewed him for the Utah Jazz job. He was right there in the mix for a couple other jobs that he just barely missed out on. Like, this dude was going to be an NBA head coach.
His name's always out there.
And then now he's going to the college ranks. He's going to want to do damage control, saying, I'm going to college because I'm getting money. Will Hardy's going to be up here in just a moment. You're going to hear from the head coach of the Utah Jazz. You just heard Danny Ainge. So here we go. Will Hardy addressing the media.
Yeah, I mean, we got a lot of work to do in every way. I think there's always a sense of like the adrenaline wearing off when the season ends and you have 48 hours or so to start to decompress, and then the questions become kind of what's the first thing to address. There's obviously a lot of things we've got to work on as a team, but getting the players geared up for their postseason programs is the first thing, on my agenda to send those guys off with kind of a clear vision of where I see them, where we see them, give them an opportunity to have conversations with me about their own goals and things that they see and feel, so that we can set ourselves up for the best summer possible.
Danny mentioned a part of the plan was having Walker at Summer League. Mm-hmm. What can he benefit from that, and how did you see his year?
Yeah, I think Walker needs to play as much as possible. There's nothing that will substitute from getting live game reps. I think it's an opportunity for him to continue to hone his craft on both ends of the floor. I think Walker, his season was okay. Obviously had some injuries to start, and expectations are always a unique thing because they can mess with your emotions. I think if you had told me when we traded for Walker 2 years ago that this is the point in the map that he would be at 2 years in, I would have been happy. But he probably overachieved in his first year and then This year, he felt like he didn't play his best for a variety of reasons. And so it makes you feel different. It's like being 500. If you win the first two and lose the second two, you feel bad. If you lose the first two and you win the second two, you feel good. But you're still 500. So I like where Walker is at in terms of, his progress over the first 2 years of his career. Now it's about attacking this summer and doing a lot of work on his body, continuing to hone himself on the offensive end. And, for all of Walker's good moments defensively, he can still get so much better. There's things from a technique standpoint, from an understanding standpoint, a communication standpoint that he needs to continue to grow at to become the centerpiece of a good defense.
After, I guess, the exit interviews and getting the players ramped up, what is your role in the offseason with them?
With the players? Yeah. I obviously try to spend time with them. Off the floor is a big deal for me in the offseason. I think building a foundation of like a personal relationship is really important for coaches and players, because we get in these moments in the season where it's emotional for all of us. There's fatigue. And sometimes there's conversations that are uncomfortable. There's moments that can be heated. And if you have a foundation of a personal relationship underneath all of that, then there's never a misunderstanding of, is this personal or not? It allows you to coach them in a way where they know and believe that I care about them as human beings, and the part that I'm coaching them hard on is just about basketball. The off season is a really good time to do those things. The second piece is being a part of their off season workouts. When the guys are back here and they're in the gym, I'll be in the gym also. It's a chance for me to dig into the minutia, where in the season I'm big picture. I'm thinking about the team. I'm thinking about the next game. I'm thinking about sort of holistic things for our program. But to get to be on the court and work with Keontae on some footwork or Taylor on some footwork, I sprinkle it in during the season when I can, but that's not my role during the actual regular season. So it gives me an opportunity to do some things and coach in a way that I don't get to when we're playing games.
Will, down the stretch of the season, how difficult was it for the veterans to sit and watch the younger players do what they needed to do? And can you give us a little insight on their impact on their development and how they maybe found a way to help even though they weren't playing?
Yeah, nobody likes to not play. They're all competitive people. They wouldn't be in the NBA if they weren't. Everybody wants to be out there on the court. But as far as how they impacted the young players, I thought their presence was great. In the locker room, you guys get to see it a little bit during the games, the way they're interacting with them on the bench, but the part that I get to see is in the film sessions, on the practice floor. Being somebody that can pull a guy aside and explain to them maybe what a coach is asking in a different way. They're also really a sounding board for the young guys. I think frustration is a part of growing, both personally and professionally. And I think there's moments where the young players are frustrated and they can vent to the veterans. And I think the veterans have an ability to, give them some shared experience. Like, yeah, I went through the same thing when I was a rookie, or don't worry, it's not always going to be that way. Like, I went through X, Y, and Z, and then this is what happened after. I think getting that type of feedback from somebody that's in the locker room that you respect, and that's also, quite candidly in a situation that you want to be in. The veteran players are guys that have had longer NBA careers and have had multiple contracts in the NBA, and that's what the young players are hunting. So I think it's really important that the veterans stay engaged the way that they did.
Will they do so in the summer as well, do you think?
Oh, yeah. No, the veterans will be in the gym as well. There's also guys get together off-site and work out for short periods of time. There's a ton of interaction amongst the whole group during the summer.
Well, has it been difficult to evaluate guys like Taylor and Bryce when their roles necessarily won't be like in an ideal world right now, like they probably wouldn't be like starting on a team that was like going for a championship, or like playing next to 3 rookies on the starting unit, passing to the guys that they were, getting the passes from the guys that they were. Can you like accurately analyze where they're growing in the situation that they were in this season?
It's hard because there is a lot of context. You want to be in a role that you can handle. And I think that there were moments where they were probably getting too much. And that's just kind of the situation that we were in. That's not their fault. That's no one's fault. So, yeah, there's parts of it that I have to sort of just block out as like it's a little noisy. But there are definitely parts that it doesn't matter what your role is in terms of like executing on both ends of the floor, that they can continue to grow at. I do recognize what you're saying. Like, yeah, when you're let's say Keontae, for example, when you're the focal point of the scouting report versus 3 months ago when you're the 5th person on the scouting report, it's a whole different thing. And so it does make it hard for me to evaluate. Doesn't mean that I don't, but I have to make sure that I'm being fair about like what I'm actually frustrated with them, what parts are within their control and what parts are, I'm putting them in a situation where maybe they're just not quite ready for it.
Do you have anything strategically that you're doing a deep dive on to evaluate?
Yeah, I've got a long list. Yeah, I mean, we've got to figure out a lot of things defensively. We've got to figure out how to use some of our smaller guards on the defensive side of the floor. Guys like Taylor, I think it's more of like a technique thing. I think he has the size and the length to be an effective player on that end, but he's got to clean up some technique. I think as it relates to some of the smaller perimeter players, it's what types of techniques do they need to work on most to make them more effective defensively. Obviously late in the season we shelved the zone for a bunch of reasons. I'm still a big believer in our zone. And so, going back and watching the parts of the season where we were playing it a good amount, and I thought we were very successful, and our defense was good in that stretch of time. What's the right balance of man and zone? I always debate with myself, like getting back into a zone on the fly versus like, does it need to be a dead ball or a free throw? Like, is that something that we can accomplish, and did we accomplish it effectively? The offensive side of the ball, I'm always debating with myself the balance of pick and roll and off ball. I think for the most part we've walked that line pretty well, but as personnel has changed, I need to be honest with myself about who we have on the roster and try to put them in a situation to be successful. Like, that's how I've gone about it each season. Is I have some thematic things that I believe in as a coach, but in terms of the actual X's and O's part of it, it's always been built around who we have on the team and trying to accentuate their strengths. I think I have a better understanding, especially of the young players now, although there is some context to things that they went through. And so I've got to try to set things up in a way that they can be successful.
Well, when we were talking to Danny, he said priority is playoff-style basketball and being able to win in that scenario. Mm-hmm. What are the things that you see on this team that you think can translate to playoffs down the road?
I think the optionality of being able to do multiple things is a huge factor for me as you get to the playoffs. I think I've used this analogy with you guys before. Like, I just don't think you can throw fastballs the whole playoffs and win. You have to be able to pivot to something else on both sides of the floor, because certain matchups give you different problems. And so I think that we are building a foundation with our players of being able to switch their mindset in a game or before a game. You know, tonight's more zone. Tonight's more off ball on offense. This game's going to be more about, you know, I go back to like the Houston game, even lately, that we won. Like, that's not a style really that we've played the whole year, of like, we're going to try to punish the switch through the post. That's where we felt like our advantage was. That's not how we're going to play every game, but against that defense, that roster, based on who we had, it made the most sense. And so I think things like that, and just sort of like their mental approach to not getting flustered by the fact that things change, is ultimately going to help us be successful in the playoffs.
Will, is there any difficulty in terms of, you know, attacking, you know, this part of your off season up until July, knowing that, you know, the roster, it has a chance to be really fluid from July to August?
I don't think about it like that. I just coach who's in the locker room. And so I'll go about it thinking about Lowry and Keontae and Walker and Taylor and Jordan, you know, John. Like, I'm going about it as if like those are the guys on the team, because they are. And if things change, so will I. I think if we always worry about what might happen, especially in this business, we may never do anything. Because there's always like the what ifs. You see it in the off season, you see it during the season. You know, what if this person gets traded? What if this happens? What if that happens? And, you know, that's where being, I use the word flexible a lot. Like, that's where being flexible is a strength for our program. But I do think that there's a way to identify things that no matter who's on the team, we have to improve. And so, like, how are we going to teach it better? How are we going to teach it differently? Are there new methods we want to use in terms of our practice schedule or shoot-around schedule, or how we show the team film? You know, we tried some different things towards the end of the year that I thought were pretty effective. So it's not just about X's and O's. There's a lot of programmatic stuff that I can work on as well that will be executed regardless of who's on the team.
Well, you talked about decompressing after the season. Obviously, players will take some time off. What are your plans? Are you going to get away a little bit? What are your off-season plans?
Yeah, I'll get away some for a couple of days at a time. I'm not very good at doing like something that's long. I get very antsy. You know, I grew up in this business as somebody that was supporting the coaches and in the video room, and so you're kind of trained to not take much time off. That being said, like, it's crazy what 5 or 6 days away can do for you in terms of just refreshing you. So I'll try to do it incrementally. Like, I don't, hey, I'm going to go away for 3 weeks and come back. I'll do 3 or 4 days, come back for a bit, 3 or 4 days, come back for a bit. That seems to be what works best for me.
Will, we're talking a lot about the foundation of the future, but I'm just curious, when you look back on Team 50, what is something that you take pride in or you can hang your hat on that you did like about this last 2023-24 season?
Yeah, I thought the guys played really hard. I also felt like, despite how the end of the season went, despite some of the noise around that, nobody made excuses. Nobody complained. Nobody blamed anybody else. And that's from the top down. Like, we're all in it together. What happens at the Delta Center is a reflection of all of us. and we win together and we lose together. Like, that's just how this has to be. It's easy to be positive and all bought in and locked in when it's going well. People tend to reveal themselves very clearly to you when things aren't going well, and I feel like I have the utmost confidence in our entire organization, because even though we had some tough times at the end of the year, I didn't see any behavior internally that was alarming in terms of people getting overly emotional, pointing fingers, blaming others, empty complaining. You know, I have written on my board, complaining is not a strategy, because it's not. We all have to dig in and do the work. We all have a part to play. You know, myself obviously very much included. And so if we're not all taking our own little piece of the responsibility when it goes poorly, then I would expect you not to take any responsibility when it goes well, because that's not right. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Coach. There he is, Will Hardy, head coach of the Utah Jazz. Wow. That went about 18 minutes. Danny Ainge went about 45 minutes.
Yeah.
But I don't think those were two different, very interesting vibes. Danny Ainge was very honest, transparent. Will Hardy, very direct, to the point. You can tell that season, and again, I'm reading between the lines. Obviously we're here in studio, so I'm not seeing body language, but hands, just based on tone, you can tell that season took a toll on him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that the pressure will continue to mount. And that's the tough thing. Being a head coach in professional sports, organizations can make decisions. Your job is to win.
Yeah.
Danny Ainge, it's his job to make decisions. Now, he's got to get personnel in there, and he's got to build a roster, and he's got a lot on his plate. But Danny Ainge he's set. He's a made man.
Yes.
Will Hardy is still trying to prove his worth. And he's trying to prove his worth with rookies and draft picks, and you can tell it's taken a toll.
Yeah.
A couple of years of losing and a couple of years of selling at the deadline, and him looking at it like, okay, so we're just going to move guys? Are we going to bring anybody in? No, we're getting draft picks. Okay, so then I'm going to get another set of rookies? Well, we don't know that. Okay, so I don't know what I'm going to get, but I guess I should expect rookies. I could see why he'd be in a bad mood, because if year 3, he finishes up with 30 wins and another lottery selection.
Which is a very distinct possibility.
Then at what point does he look and he's like, yeah, so I took that 5-year deal and now we're 3 years in, and do I get to stay through the actual build? Because I was here through 3 really difficult years. I can totally understand his frustration.
Well, and okay, I mean, let's just climb into his brain here a little bit. Had he not taken that Utah Jazz job and just waited a little bit based on what happened in Boston, he'd be the head coach of the Boston Celtics right now.
No question. He was their number one option.
And so he took this job, and he just he's gone through 2 losing seasons. He's essentially coached 4 different teams, because every year over the last 2 years, his team's been essentially dismantled at the trade deadline. And then you just heard your boss and Danny Ainge say, you know what, regular season, it's not my thing. It just doesn't matter to me.
And he also,
it's all about the playoffs.
He was also very non-committal about using draft picks and being extremely fluid and willing to strike and hit. So he essentially, he's not drawing up the game plan. He's just saying, when it hits, you'll know.
Yeah. And
when I have it, then you'll be the first to know.
Yeah. It's, it's like the old Bill Parcells line. If you want me to cook the dinner, let me shop for the groceries. And I'm not saying Will Hardy wants to make personnel decisions. He's just like, I can't make this 5-course ribeye steak with all the sides and everything else beautiful dinner that he is putting on himself. I don't think that he feels crazy pressure from Danny Ainge to win, because Danny Ainge doesn't care about the regular season. He just said that. But Will Hardy does. Will Hardy cares the fact that he's not in the playoffs for 2 years in a row and he's sitting at home. you can tell that's eating at him and it's driving him nuts. And so he's like, I want to build this beautiful championship dinner and just put together all this masterpiece Michelin, 5-star restaurant. But yet I don't have.
You're giving me developmental ingredients.
Yeah, but you're giving me a hasty bake, my first Fisher-Price oven to work with here.
Yeah, an easy bake.
Easy bake, that's what I was thinking of, yeah.
Yeah, Scotty, the frustration is completely understandable. And, he's looking at it like, all right, so we're dealing with rookies and now more rookies and more draft picks and assets. That's fun for you.
Yeah.
That's really fun for you. But what would be fun for me is if I could have something along the lines of Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, Kevin Garnett, the things that I was accustomed to when he left with Tatum and Brown and the crew in Boston. And he's like, these were moldable, high-level, high-accomplishing players. And now he's like, yeah, Keontae George is great. And, I don't know if he's a superstar guard point in this league, but he could maybe play off ball, maybe a star next. And it was like, you can hear it. And, he's being completely transparent and honest, but you can hear it.
Yeah. And again, maybe we're reading too much into it. I don't think we are. But we'll revisit some of these comments. Big news out of BYU today. We'll get to all of it. A busy day. Hanging out with us in studio. Jenny's with us, lead marketing strategist at Dev Simplify. Back in studio with us again. How are you?
Hi, Jenny.
Hi, how are you guys? It's fun to be back.
Well, for those we're great. For those that missed our first conversation with you, kind of just give us a bare bones. Treat us like the old Michael Scott line. Talk to us like we're 5-year-olds.
Okay.
Simplify, Dev Simplify.
Dev Simplify. Okay, great. Well, thank you for inviting me back. And Dev Simplify, we've been serving businesses in Utah for 13 years, designing and building custom software, ERP systems, integrations. We work with CEOs, internal IT teams, and we just partner with companies and anything that's causing bottlenecks or building legacy systems, updating systems, we come in and we can either take projects from beginning to end and manage them with an inside team or take them without an inside team. But we work in the software development world.
Give us an example, like of somebody that had an issue and that you guys were able to resolve.
Okay. Recently, one of our longest clients, been a client for like 7 years, we started with, they had never sold any of their products online. It was an expensive product base. And they came in and said, we want to see if we could sell like this $15,000 machine frame combo without someone calling. And so we built a system to do that, I came in on the marketing side and they had a small IT team. They had a small in-house marketing team and we partnered with them for proof of concept. First go around, we were able to, proof of concept was a massive success. We sold like 15 of these combos. They had never sold a product online. And then from there, we integrated their back-end systems with ERP. We built an online, when COVID hit, we built an entire online festival platform with where we were able to engage with online customers and do their festivals because all festivals were canceled. They're now doing 3 festivals a year on that platform. And we built an education platform for them. So just, we come in at a whole bunch of different levels. We also, in the healthcare industry, had a company come into us that had a legacy software that needed updating. We ended up updating that software with them, and now they work with us, 40 hours a week with one of our employees. Like, we just consult with them to continue improving. So generally, it starts with just something that just needs to be updated or custom built. That someone in their IT team that generally can, maintain their website or maintain their software, that's what their IT team is there for. But when it moves into something a little bit more complex, that's where, we step in and help companies solve those issues.
So this is what you need to do if you've got a business and you're looking to take that next step, and maybe you've got a roadblock, something that you can't move forward with, if it's e-commerce or if it's some type of business backing.
Yep. Analytical dashboards where you need systems to talk to each other, and with tech these days, those are things people need. So
especially in business.
Yep.
So if you're that person, you're offering a complimentary discovery session.
Right.
Really quickly, talk about that, and then we'll give out the phone number for it.
Okay, so we're offering a complimentary discovery session, and a discovery session is exactly that. We just get on a call, understand what it is you need. And then we're also offering a complimentary product goal chart with an additional 5 hours of free service. And so from the discovery meeting, we move to the product goal chart, which is really identifying who your stakeholders are, what are the goals of the product, stakeholders being your end user, your back end people, your front end people, like whoever those are. And then from a product goal chart, we move to a wireframe. So we're offering a complimentary, and we've only ever offered this here.
On air.
And we're only offering 5, as you can imagine, it's time conducive. So we're only offering 5 spots, and it's just today only. So
take advantage of that.
Right.
Call them 801-701-3660. That's Jenny and Joel here in studio with us, Dev Simplify, 801-701-3660. And, Scotty, I've seen businesses hit these roadblocks. My mom, obviously owning the candy shop.
Yeah.
Like there are things that you get to with payroll and shipping and all
scheduling
and
CRM systems,
and
ERP systems.
Every business is unique. Every
Right.
business needs some unique function.
Exactly.
That's what Dev Simplify excels at. So if you need that, if you've thought about it, 801-701-3660. 13 years of business. They've never offered this complimentary.
Never.
And you've got an opportunity. Just be one of the first 5 callers at 801-701-3660.
That's 801-701-3660. Call right now. This is 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
The NHL is coming to Salt Lake City.
It's about time.
I have been waiting decades.
This is huge news.
As Utah prepares to welcome the National Hockey League.
This city has long deserved a second pro squad.
The Zone will have all the coverage from every angle as we'll be with the new team every step of the way. From every moment of the offseason right up to when the puck hits the ice in the fall.
A new era in Utah sports.
Your home for the best coverage of the NHL in Utah is right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Looking for the latest on the Jazz, Utes, Cougars, and Aggies?
Yeah!
We've got you covered. This is Hans Olsen and Scotty G on 97.5, the Sports Zone.
Hans Olsen, Scott Gerard, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. BYU has found their man. Ooh, boy, did they find their man. Kevin Young is the new head coach of the BYU men's basketball team. Just felt like 48, 72 hours away, was on the cusp of becoming an NBA head coach, and now he's the head coach of BYU, and boy, is he paid handsomely. Matt Norlander, several others reporting from sources BYU has not released, nor will they ever release financial information, and don't have to because they're a private institution. But the consensus is that it's in the range of a 7-year, $30 million contract, which would average about $4.2, $4.3 million. It probably starts, these contracts usually escalate. So probably the wording is probably 3.5, 2.5 to start, and then by the time it's over, you're looking at probably around $5 million.
You know what's significant about this?
Kalani Sitake's like, wait, what?
Well, the money's significant, and Kalani's, I'm sure, looking at it like, how much? But in my years on air, I've never heard numbers as expressed as this one. And there's a couple of thoughts on this, because I have talked to many, many coaches that have come through BYU. And there's always tended to be a no conversation clause in their contract. This is the way I understand it, Scotty, that when you sign it, you don't talk about it. But the problem is agents talk.
Oh, yeah.
And so, as a university, you could go to Kevin Young and you could say, did you happen to release those numbers? No. Did your agent? I don't think so. Well, then how exactly are the numbers out there? Did your wife maybe say something? Because I just know BYU over the years has been extremely secretive. I mean, I don't want to sit here and harp on this, but the fact that the number is out there is really intriguing to me because it's not just hey, don't tell people. Typically, they're like, hey, let's make sure that this is between us.
Well, and frankly, I think there's a lot that's different about what's going on here. And I think this is very good for BYU for these numbers to be out there.
I do too.
I think because what this says to the whole world, because this is a new era of BYU athletics, because you're not in the West Coast Conference, you're not in the Mountain West Conference, you're playing with the big boys, and the whole conversation was BYU's too frugal, they're too cheap, they're not invested enough. They're not quite sure if they really want to cannonball into the waters of playing big boy athletics. Are they really up for it? And so it wouldn't surprise me if Tom Holmoe, and again, I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me if Tom or Brian Santiago or whoever is like, hey, look, we're going to leak this because we want the world to know we're not messing around. We just lost our coach to Kentucky.
Very well could be.
We lost our coach to Kentucky. We want to show and make a statement to the rest of the world that we're here to play big boy athletics.
It very well could be. Now, that's risky because, as you mentioned, and I've talked about, it gets back to Kalani.
Yes.
It gets back to every coach at BYU, and they're like, huh.
Well, and as much as I love Kalani, I would tell him, like, hey, look, you don't go 5-7 next year. You go 10-2.
Yes.
And we'll chat.
No, that's a great point. Hold it as leverage.
Yeah.
But I told you going back, I guess a year, I guess it'd be about a year and a half or whatever, when I decided to take that color analyst job.
Yeah.
And getting to at least see just a little bit of the workings, a little bit of the internal workings. They spared no expense on anything.
Yeah. No.
I came back to you and I was like, Scotty, like, it's not what I was thinking. Like, they paid me what I asked. They took care of everything from every penny of travel to, and I'm like, it is being run as a first class operation.
Yeah.
At least the way they treated me.
Yeah.
And
because you saw what I went through.
Yeah.
On a lower tier Mountain West budget where we're scraping pennies for gasoline.
Yeah. And, and I'm hoping that comes back around the way it should.
Good luck.
Yeah, but it should.
Yeah.
But the other point is we watched BYU go and get a Jay Hill hire that you and I sat here and were like, so is that a realistic thing? Is that really realistic? Because Jay Hill is a head coach. He's not a defensive coordinator at at the Big 12 level, at where he is with BYU. He's a head coach.
Yeah.
And BYU, I know, was very aggressive and very forward in getting Jay Hill signed. And that told me a lot. I was like, okay, this is not the old, hey, what would you do it for? And by the way, you're going to need to be a stake president while you're here. It was very aggressive what they did with Jay Hill. And this is another step, don't you think, Scotty?
Yeah. And here's, some more details coming out on it, that essentially BYU in the past had multiple candidates come in. They would all have to talk to different church leaders, that there was a very long bureaucratic process.
Oh, yes.
Now it's, according to, and again, Matt Norlander and others reporting that they zeroed in on Kevin Young, and he was the only guy that they truly interviewed. And that's
and probably had a little list, but like if he says no, then but we're not gonna let him say no.
Exactly. And so they went all in. They got it done quickly, and they said, "This is who we want. Let's go." And they skipped a bunch of normal bureaucratic processes. I'm telling you, this is a new age at BYU.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Kevin Young. Kevin Young is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Kevin Young was born here in Salt Lake City, Utah. Kevin Young, actually one of his very first coaching jobs, and Scotty, I want to go back, 2005-ish, 2006-ish. He was with, it wasn't UVU at the time, but it was, what was it?
Utah Tech, or not Utah Tech, Utah Valley College. Yeah.
So he goes back to UVCC or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And he was an assistant there, and then he moved through the developmental league. He actually coached the Utah Flash as an assistant, and then got the head coaching job as the Utah Flash head coach, and then moved to the Iowa G League, and then I think it was another G League team, if I'm not mistaken. But he has been a head coach at the G League. He's assisted a little bit in the college game. But as Scotty mentioned, he has become a staple in nearly every NBA head coaching opening for an interview.
Yeah.
Like, hey, let's bring him in and let's see what we got.
The amount of, and he's only 42 years old. The amount of experience that he's crammed into a short amount of time is pretty remarkable at all different levels. And the fact that this guy was right there on the cusp of being an NBA head coach just 48 hours ago, and now becoming the head coach at BYU, this is a coup. And honestly, just based on experience, just based on the resume, and I got to be careful when I say this because he's not been a head coach at the Division I level,
which is the highest Division I level now.
Yeah, and he's playing in the most difficult conference. I think BYU upgraded their head coach
from Pope.
That's
a big statement.
I know. And look, a year from now, I might eat those words.
It's a really big statement.
But what did Mark Pope do? Mark Pope was a head coach at UVU and then took over at BYU. That's his coaching. This guy, look at what he's done, who he's been around, who he's coached, his experience. His resume is crazy. Now, does that translate to the college game? Does that translate to the Big 12? I don't know.
Well,
but I will say this: it's pretty damn impressive.
Okay, so I'm starting to maybe buy into your thought of BYU letting the numbers get out there. And this is another reason that it might be true. And bear with me here. So they just watched Mark Pope leave their program.
Yes.
For Kevin Young to leave the NBA and to take this payday as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and for it to be made public, I'm wondering a little bit if it's a ploy or a push to retain him. In saying, if Kevin Young, let's say Kevin Young blows things out of the water this year, and he's able to, get Hall back or whoever back, Cleef. I don't know if Cleef has made his decision, but all these guys that have jumped in the portal, and he's like, nope, come play. Hey, NBA, let's get you ready for the NBA. Come back here. Let's get you ready for the NBA. And he makes a big push. He finishes top 3 in the Big 12. He gets a 4 seed and makes it to the Sweet 16. I'm hoping that what the groundwork that they've laid says that he'll be back for 2025 and maybe 2026 and maybe 2027, because I don't want it to be about the money. I know that, and Pope said it in his opening presser at Kentucky. He said, everybody who knew me at BYU, everybody who's known me growing up, they knew I was Kentucky Blue.
Yeah.
And so they knew he was going to go. Okay, well, what is Kevin Young? Because I don't want 1 year and a run to the Sweet 16 to lead to a stepping stone for Kevin Young to take the next Duke opening. And I'm wondering if these numbers are like, hey, everybody, just so you know, we're going to lick this and stick it on the wall so you can see we pay our guys here.
Yeah. Yep.
And all of that hubbub and rumor of we don't pay and it's a calling, we're going to put that to the wayside. I'm starting to wonder if that isn't BYU's decision to let that out a bit.
I 100% think it is.
I think it's helpful.
Yeah, I think it's incredibly helpful for BYU. You just made a big boy statement here if you're BYU. I mean, you could have gone a very safe, frugal way. And yesterday on the air while you were gone, I was pumping Chris Burgess like crazy because I felt like he was a smart move. It was a safe move. And frankly, I thought it was the right move because never in a million years did I think BYU would be able to snag Kevin Young. So, never in a million years.
So I was with my buddies this weekend, some old teammates, and hanging out. And I said the exact same thing to them. I was telling them there's 2 NBA assistants there is a Utah assistant, and I said, but it's probably going to be the UNLV assistant because that's just the safe kind of landing zone for them.
Yep.
And Kevin Young and Alex Jensen were 1A and 1B. Those two, but it was like, that's a pipe dream.
Yeah.
And for them to land Kevin Young is really a gigantic statement for them. And the money to leak out there, that's interesting.
Yeah. 12:49, Hans and Scotty, what you may have missed coming up. We'll get back to more of the Danny Ainge conversation coming up a little bit later on. It's all straight ahead right here on The Zone.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I present?
This is JJ and Alex.
Last thing I'll mention on this about the future of BYU basketball. Dallin Hall, Utah, born and raised, returned missionary, and even he's in the transfer portal. Like, BYU cannot take for granted that there's just going to be kids of the faith that want to just come to BYU and play. You're in a bigger game, man. You got to have to play the transfer portal and the NIL game, even with LDS kids, because we're all human beings, and we all need to have money to make a living. We all have goals and dreams. If you can't provide what other places can, those kids will go where they're being provided.
Catch JJ and Alex afternoons from 3 to 6. Presented by G2G Bars on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Every moment of every show is available in podcast form by searching Hans and Scotty on your favorite podcasting platform or online at KSLSports.com. This is Hans Olsen and Scotty G on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Open up the champagne, pop. It's my house, come on, turn it up. Hear a knock on the door and the night begins. 'Cause we've done this before, so you come.
Hans and Scotty, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Hey, the gang's back together again.
Yeah, it's
been
so
a couple
nice.
days.
It's so nice. I know this is a feverish show. It is.
Yeah, I need to talk to you guys about that.
What do you mean, Lloyd? Are you taking time off?
Well, it's that time.
You're going to pull the old GM revenge vacation?
It's that time.
That time.
Oh, boy.
The old SC revenge vacation?
It is a crazy day. Inside this Danny Ainge press conference that we'll get to, he talks about the Utah Jazz newest hire.
Yeah.
What do you think about the Avery Bradley hire?
I think it's a smart move. I like former players being involved in player development.
So he is now the president of player development, which is really interesting.
It's a big title.
And you'll probably hear Danny Ainge talk a little bit more deeply about this, but he said, we're not really sure if Avery wants to get into the coaching side or the management side. He said it wasn't his hire, but he said, I introduced him.
Yeah, it's his hire.
It's his hire.
Yeah.
That's his contact. That's his hire. And he said, I introduced him, and those guys hired him. No, it's you did this. Avery Bradley is just fresh off a court. A lot of people might not know this, but he was with the Boston Celtics back in the late 1800s, like 1840, 1860s, and then played all the way till 2022 with the Los Angeles Lakers. He was in the league for a lot of years.
Yeah.
And he was a great part, and he always felt like he was an on-court general, and you hope that he can do something with this.
Yeah. I think it's a smart hire. Now, look, they don't always pan out, but I like it when former players get involved in front office and in player development, because they have, especially guys that weren't necessarily the most talented guys. Like Magic Johnson, when he took over the Lakers as a head coach, it was miserable because I think Magic is like, why can't you do this? It was easy for me. Yeah. Why isn't it easy for you?
Yeah.
Guys that are so exceptional as players don't necessarily make good coaches. But guys like Scott Skiles or hopefully Avery Bradley, and I know Avery's not coaching, but just in development, realizing, okay, I had limitations as a player, talent-wise, but I made it in the league for a long time because I was able to do this, this, and this. Let me share that experience with you. And I'm not saying Avery Bradley wasn't a talented player. He, obviously, in the league, you have to have an insane amount of talent, but nobody ever looked at Avery Bradley like, oh, what a freak.
Yeah.
But he made it because he was smart, he was dedicated, and he had an incredible skill set that he worked hard to develop. And I think that's great experience for a young team.
The other thing I wanted to mention in what you may have missed, because we are so packed, I'll do it quickly. You excited for the play-in tournament tonight?
Yeah, I am, actually.
I am too. I like the matchups.
Yeah.
I like that the two LA teams or the two California teams were able to separate. And we could potentially get a Lakers Golden State game for the 8th seed. And one is out.
Yeah.
Now that to me would be prime postseason basketball.
Doesn't
it's
get
a
much
one
better
and
than that.
done between Golden State and the Lakers.
LeBron versus Steph for the right to get into the playoffs.
Which team are we going to tear apart in about 45 minutes?
Yeah.
What team are we going to dismantle?
And if you're Oklahoma City, you're like, wow, we busted our tail to get the 1 seed, and we get either LeBron or Steph.
Yeah. So I asked Kurt Heelan that. I said, who wouldn't you want to see? And he said, that was while you were out? Friday? Did we have Kurt Heelan on Friday?
I think it was on Thursday.
You were here.
What did he? How did he respond to that? I think he wanted. I don't think he wanted LeBron.
He said he'd rather see Golden State.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And he said he wants to dodge LeBron.
Yep.
Hey, Lakers, OKC first round. What happens there?
OKC still wins, but I think it's a dogfight.
I think that thing is a dogfight.
Yeah.
Anthony Davis got called out again recently.
As he should.
So he's probably trying to puff his chest out a little bit.
Yep.
So play-in tournament, that thing tips off tonight. Make sure you tuned in because it's going to be fun. It's TNT 5:30 tip for the Lakers Pelicans, and then the nightcap is the Warriors and the Kings starting at 8 o'clock.
Hans and Scotty here in studio at Dev Simplify. Custom software development. So many things they can do for you to help your business. If you've got a problem, they'll solve it. Dev Simplify is here to help you out. And Jenny's with us once again. Now, Jenny, I know there's probably CEOs out there that are like, look, I got an IT department. That's what they're for. They can but you work with IT departments to kind of help them take what they do to the next level.
We do. I would say about 80% of our customer base, we work with their internal IT system, or not system, people, their team. And generally, we're brought in their internal IT teams. Like I said, they're good at if they have legacy software, a website, backend systems, they're good at maintaining those, understanding them at a base level. But when it comes to comprehensive or custom software updates, designing, developing anything custom, we'll get a call and we meet with their IT teams, and sometimes we manage it from end to end, and we manage the team. We have project managers and designers. We work as a full team. Sometimes we just take it from end to end and not work with their internal team. So it just depends on what the customer needs, and we'll meet them where they're at.
So I talked to you just a little bit about my background in this department.
Right.
And, one of the biggest needs that I saw or typically came across for companies was the software's inability to speak to each other,
right?
To connect,
right?
It always felt like trying to put those Lego pieces together,
right,
was impossible, and that's one area where Dev Simplify can really help you.
Right. I mean, we've done a lot of system integrations, things from, like custom background integrations where we've built dashboards that connect all the systems across the board so the people who need that information aren't jumping from system to system getting them. Data analytics, tying data analytics into their backend system. Like I said, ERP systems for their management systems. We've built logistics systems for driving companies that needed logistics for their drivers, know where they're at, when they're coming back, times. I think back-end systems is something most people don't think about in business until they're there and they need them. They're like, why don't these things talk? And it can become
a huge... It'd be so convenient if I had this.
Well, it's a bottleneck for businesses, and it's a frustration for their team members and their clients and everything. Like, we just need all these systems to connect and talk, and we've done that a lot for companies.
It's really simple. It all starts with a phone call, 801-701-3660. But let's get to the good stuff here. You've got 5 hours of service, no cost, and no contract.
Yep.
And that's valued at over $700.
Yeah. We are looking to kind of expand and get our name out there. We've never, ever marketed in 13 years. This is our first go-around at it, so it's a bit new for us. We've built our business completely on referrals, so we said, let's get our name out there. We want people to come in and talk to us, and, there's a lot of value just in consulting, just sitting down and talking to someone who understands from design all the way through to development, what it really does take. A lot of people just jump into the development side and they haven't taken the time to wireframe, goal chart, do the prototyping, testing it out. They just jump in, and so they're going back and forth from development and then back into the front end and fixing it and then back into development, and it's just not coming together. And so just sitting down and consulting with some is really helpful.
It's a big time offer.
Yeah,
it really is. It's what we call the complimentary discovery session with Dev Simplify. If you're needing to build a company app, or you're trying to help two things work together, or you're trying to build some back end and your team is stumped or you are stumped, this is a free complimentary discovery session. Just call 701-3660. That's 801-701-3660. Only 5 spots, so
Right.
call now.
Thank you.
97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.